I lost my stick going in. I remember just grabbing the girl and picking her up and tossing her on the ground, and I started punching at her. Someone grabbed me off of her, and the other drill instructors were like, "This is not WWE." My name's Kristine Phanthavilay. I was in the Marine Corps. I served just under 15 years, and I got out as a staff sergeant. I was born and raised in San Diego, firstborn American generation to two immigrant parents. They're both from Laos. They're war refugees. And I grew up pretty much in a normal suburb, not very exciting childhood, to be honest. And it's funny, I did grow up in Mira Mesa, which is just outside of Miramar Base, but had no clue what the Marine Corps was, knew nothing about the military. I wasn't close to my parents. They didn't talk about where they came from too often. They were just busy trying to make it. When I was born, I know we were in a very poor neighborhood at first, but by the time I was in third grade, we had moved and I grew up comfortable. I was never cold, never hungry. They worked a lot. We weren't super close because of the culture difference that they just weren't, parents weren't usually close to their children. They didn't really hover over me. So as a child, I kind of did what I wanted, but I also knew what I wasn't allowed to do. I didn't really leave home. I wasn't allowed to have friends. My parents didn't really understand the need for, um, I don't know, friendships outside of the family. They didn't understand the emotional needs of an American child. So I didn't get to make friends from school, hang out with them outside of school, go to birthday parties, things, kids typically do when they're kids. I honestly joined the military out of impulse. I was trying to do the college thing for about a year. I wasn't good at it, but it was just something that I thought I had to do because, that's what parents tell you you have to do. You got to graduate high school, go to college, get a degree. So I was trying that, but I was failing miserably, getting bad grades, C's and below. So I don't know. I just thought that going to boot camp, any kind, would help me out. So I talked to all the branches. I talked to every recruiter that was near me. 9/11 happened when I was a freshman. So we were scared because, we didn't know what was going on. All we knew was, even though it happened in New York, we're San Diego, we're a military town. So we thought we were going to be next. We were very paranoid. I remember we got sent home, and my parents were very scared too. It kind of always lingered in the back of my mind. Like, I always thought we were going to be hit directly with the war again. I thought we were going to be attacked. I always had this thought that, maybe I should have some kind of military skills, but I never took it too seriously until I realized that college was just really hard for me, and maybe I wasn't an academic and I was meant to excel somewhere else. So I just wanted to try something very different from what I was already doing. The first recruiter I talked to was an Army recruiter because I didn't know what the Marine Corps was. I originally thought Air Force planes, Army tanks, Navy ships, Marine submarines. So I knew nothing. I was very ignorant about the military. So that's why I went straight to an Army recruiter because I thought, oh, they're really tough. Maybe I should try them because they're the hardest ones. And they were always talking shit about the Marines. I never even brought up the Marines, but they were like, Marines this, Marines that, and they're dumb and this and that. They just were always hating on the Marines. I don't remember details, to be honest, but I remember feeling tricked by my recruiter into trying to get me to ship on a date before I was ready. And I kind of went and talked to a Marine recruiter out of spite and asked to be shipped as soon as possible. I'm very impulsive. My recruiter actually saved me from going open contract. I walked in, I was like, send me right now. Um, I scored really well on the ASVAB, 85. So he was like, I can't send you open contract with a good conscience. Like, let me find you a job. And he was trying to convince me to go Intel, but I remember that was like a 12-month wait, and I didn't want to do that. So he was like, okay, well, you want to work with your hands? You can go in as a mechanic. So we chose the mechanical option, and I ended up getting motor T. So I went to boot camp in Paris Island, and it was scary because I'd never been through anything like that before. So my plan was to just be quiet, try not to draw any attention to myself. And that plan failed when I accidentally called my senior drill instructor recruit because she was about my height, like 5 feet tall. I heard someone yelling for my name, and I think I said, "What recruit?" to her. And she comes running from the corner and grabs me and just throws me against the wall and starts cussing me out. And I think I've been on her radar ever since, which apparently paid off because I ended up getting selected to be company honor grad towards the end, though. Because stick matches when you're pretty much dueling with another recruit with giant Q-tips. So you're trying to knock each other out. Yeah, my pugil stick fight was apparently really impressive to her. So I lost my stick going in. I remember just grabbing the girl and picking her up and tossing her on the ground, and I started punching at her. I don't remember who grabbed me, but someone grabbed me off of her, and the other drill instructors were like, "This is not WWE." So I thought I was in trouble. But like a couple hours later, while we were at the chow hall, my senior comes and grabs me. She just takes me to the, she doesn't say a word. She takes me to the ice cream machine. You get one scoop. And I think that was my reward. So I think she was impressed. I honestly sucked at everything, in my opinion. I didn't excel at anything except that one pugil stick fight. I wasn't the best shooter. I was slow. I can't swim. And back then it was easier because there were 4 levels to swimming, and the lowest one was swim qual 4. Now it's even harder. It's beginner, middle, advanced, or intermediate advanced. I can't remember. But yeah, I sucked at everything. So everything was kind of hard, especially running. Um, but I think I'm okay at hiking. You know how for the crucible, like the very end at boot camp, you split up into groups and you're with certain drill instructors. The group that was with my senior, um, they said that she had talked about me a little bit and about how I think they said that she wanted us to be more like me in the sense that like no matter how hard it got, like she pushed through, she would bleed through things. She never cried and she never quit. It was the first thing I've ever accomplished in my life. I went through my childhood with no sports, no activities. I was never part of a real team. I snuck onto the powder puff football team. My mom caught me and made me quit. I just wasn't a part of anything. So it was really nice to not only be a part of something, but come out on top of something for the first time in my life. School was at also North Carolina, Camp Johnson, Camp Lejeune. And then my first duty station was Camp Fuji, Japan. I don't know why, but I really wanted to go back home for my first duty station. I wanted to go to Pendleton. So I was irritated. And it was winter when I arrived. It was like December when I arrived in mainland Japan. So it was cold and snowing. Like I said, I'm a jungle Asian. I'm not meant for the cold. So I don't know, just everything about it pissed me off, but I eventually warmed up to it. I wish I could have done better. I honestly think I was a little bit depressed for many reasons. I had leaders that didn't like me. I just felt like I was treated unfairly while I was there. I felt like I was under scrutiny too. And we were a very small base. We were a battalion of like 100 that were running a training facility. I don't know. I was always struggling to stay positive there. I felt like even if I did something to try to be social, there was an eat club there. And, Marines go out and they drink. The drinking age was 20 over there. I arrived at age 20. But I remember getting accused of alcoholism because I was going out. I was getting accused of all sorts of things. I was pretty miserable for the most part at my first duty station. I made some really good friends, but I don't know, the Marine Corps was different than what it is today. And I feel like if people didn't like you, then there's absolutely nothing you could do about it, especially if they were friends with the right people. I had a corporal that just fucking hated me. I don't know if it's just because I was another female. She was a female. She was a motor T operator. But it always felt like she had it out for me. I found out after I left that she was fucking the maintenance chief. So I think that's why she never got in trouble for anything she did. I remember one time she made me clean the female head with bleach. and she insisted I keep the doors closed. Um, and I told her I didn't feel good. I was nauseous, and I ended up passing out in there. And another corporal found me in there, another female corporal, and she was like, "What the fuck do you think you're doing?" And I was scared. I'm a little PFC. I didn't know how to defend myself, so I was just scared. I was just like, "I'm sorry." I mean, I eventually tried to defend myself, but you know, if you don't know the right people, you're gonna get in trouble. Since she was friends with like my sergeant, on the maintenance side, I feel like they were just always trying to get me in trouble. There's rules in the barracks, no females entering male rooms, vice versa. There's curfew and this and that. And honestly, the rules were broken all the time, but I was the one getting in trouble for it. Remember thinking like if, I don't know, leadership mattered and rank mattered. Nobody ever taught me how to defend myself against poor leadership. If you had shitty leadership, that just sucks for you and you just dealt with it. I did love working on the trucks. I did. I did love my other mechanics, the fellow mechanics. I did love being in a foreign country. I wish I took advantage of that and explored a little more. But like I said, I wasn't in the right state of mind. So I wasn't always thinking of ways to, make my experience there better. I didn't explore as much as I should have. I was at the bottom of Mount Fuji and I didn't climb the mountain. I wish I did a lot more. I did a little bit. I went to some temples. I did go to a festival. I've gone to Tokyo, but I know I should have done a lot more in my time there. After Fuji, I went to Ninth Com. It was fun and it was interesting. I quickly learned about Ninth Crime because the day I checked in, there were 6 Marines from Motor T getting NJP'd for various reasons. Some of them drugs, some of them DUI, I think. Could only go up from what I came from. At Fuji, I got NJP'd 3 times. So I checked into Ninth Com as a private. So, when I told them it was for assault, they were like, oh, at least it's not something dumb like a DUI. And they'd look at a Marine that got a DUI. So they weren't too unhappy about it. They were just like, you know what? Welcome to Ninth Crime. You're at home. There are a few Marines from Fuji that I am still in contact with today. And I've built more relationships in Ninth Com. Some of them I still talk to as well. We were getting ready for deployment. I deployed with Ninth Com to Iraq. I went in 2008, so it was the back end of the war. So, the rules of engagement changed a lot from earlier on in the war. And our main mission was to shut down Camp Fallujah. We were one of the last Fallujahs. So we were always on the road. They were packing stuff up from Fallujah and we were taking it to all these other bases. And we were fortunate enough to all go home. I was nervous mostly because I did think of worst case scenario. What if they, you know, captured us? There are things far worse than death. I am aware I'm a female, so, I just imagine the terrible things that would happen if I ever got taken alive. So that was always in the back of my head, that I'd rather go out in a blaze of glory than be taken alive by an enemy, especially as a female. We're based at Fallujah, and once we finished tearing it down, we spent our last month at Al Assad. One of my sergeants, he was Russian with a very, very thick accent. And I remember we were halted for a possible IED. So while they were checking it out, for whatever reason, Sergeant says, guys, hang on, I see the wire. And we're like, what the hell is he talking about? What wire, Sergeant? He was like, the wire for the IED. Cover me. I'm going to go cut it. And we're like, this came out of nowhere that this guy says this. And, we just were not prepared for him to do what he did. He ran out of the truck. We don't know where he went. We don't know what wire he cut. He probably cut somebody's internet, but he ran out, did something, came back, and he was like, you're welcome. I made money because we would stand duty for 4 hours at one of the gates. Sometimes I would take people's duties for like $40. I would say my deployment wasn't as exciting as most Marines. We spent the birthday out there, and we were lucky enough to be given 2 beers each on the night of our birthday. And I sold both of mine for $100 each. I didn't care. I made $200. At the time, I was engaged. to someone that I met from Fuji. We got married, I got pregnant. It was like my last year in. And before that, I thought I was going to be a lifer, but everything changed when I was pregnant. I was like, you know what? Maybe this is not something I want to do as a parent. I mean, I know a lot of people do, but I see how hard it is. And I didn't want that for myself, for my child. So I made the decision to get out for my family, for the kid I was going to have, which is funny because almost immediately after I got out, I got cheated on and we got divorced like right away. I had her right before I got out. I had her in January and I got out in April of 2010. We had separated. The affair got exposed around that same time. I can't remember if it was before or after I got out, but it was around the same time. So I had this plan and all of a sudden it went away. There were so many thoughts in my head, like, this, I should have just stayed in. This is not what I wanted. It just, I felt very lost once I got out because of losing the Marine Corps, losing the family that I thought I was going to have. Well, I focused on trying to become something in healthcare. I didn't know if I wanted to be a paramedic or doctor, but I wanted to head in that route. I wanted to be in emergency medicine for sure. I got my EMT right away, but I stayed in school thinking that one day I would either become a paramedic or make it all the way to med school, something. But I really missed the Marine Corps. I thought about it every day. So when a PSR, prior service recruiter, finally called me, I hopped on that opportunity really quickly to come back into the reserves. Like I said, it was the first time I had accomplished anything, the first time I felt like I belonged anywhere, even though there were definitely a lot of ups and downs. Didn't want to do anything else. I finally felt like I figured out who I was supposed to be and where I belonged. I was comfortable in the Marine Corps. It's what I wanted to keep doing. They do offer lat moves because some jobs were offering bonuses, but I just stayed motor T. It was nice to put the uniform back on. I had been out of it for 2 years before they called me. So it made me very happy to come back. Um, I love the uniform. I love putting boots on. Um, I love the rifle range. Everything fun about the Marine Corps. I loved fixing trucks. It was just nice to be in the reserves because now I was a single parent. Um, I can't imagine how I would have handled it as active duty. The reserves gave me the flexibility to figure out when to parent, when to work, when to be a Marine. So it gave options and flexibility. The reserves was a good fit at the time. I met one of my, we're not close as in the sense that we don't talk every day, but I consider him one of my closest friends now. At Miramar, I was stationed at Miramar. It was my first time at the wing. And it was just a unit that they're disbanded now, but they were RSU, Reserve Support Unit. And they're just a unit that existed to help various Marines finish training, like annual training. There were Marines augmented to like all these units everywhere, and we just would hold training events, 2 blocks of um, training events for them where they can get everything done. It's interesting. I always, because, I didn't work with grunts at the time. We weren't integrated yet. So I always had this image of grunts of being, misogynist and mean and hated females. You don't have to confirm or deny if that's true. Ray, he was a grunt and he was just one of the nicest people I've ever met. He inspired me to become better at, just things in general. He made me feel better about just me as a Marine. I told you I was slow, wasn't the best shooter, but I can hike. And I remember they were always trying to get me to train to be a better runner. They were trying to push me to run with this girl that was supposedly fast. They're like, yeah, she should run with her. That girl's fit. And I remember him coming to my rescue saying, that girl's not even fit. She weighs like 80 pounds. You put a pack on her, what's she going to do for you? And he said, Fan, oh, they call me Fan. He was like, Fan can hike. He was like, I'd rather take Fan out of the wire than anyone else here. And that made me feel really good. My second reserve unit was 6 Anglico, which I hear is supposed to be a grunt unit, but we didn't have grunts. We were a bunch of forward observers and radio operators, JTACs. So that was the closest thing to being with grunts, I guess. Those Marines are the ones I've become closest to. And a part of it may be due to us experiencing the loss of Miharg, one of my mechanics. It happened after he got out. So my unit was in the Bay Area at the time. Mihar was from a small town, Salinas. We kind of joke about him having the demeanor of like a Neanderthal, but he was a good guy and he was a hard worker. And even though he was just a PFC, he wasn't afraid of tasks. And I loved that about him. And I had spent 2 weeks straight with him during annual training. You know how you have to do a 2 week block of training at some point in time in the year. So I spent my 2 weeks with him, and we just stayed behind and worked on trucks, and I got to know him. And he came from a hard life. He really wanted to be active duty, and for whatever reason, he got pushed into the reserves instead. But I know he wanted to join the Marines to take care of his late twin brother's son. That was his purpose. I mean, that didn't happen, so here he was with me in the reserves. And I don't really know what he did when he left us, but I know he was struggling to make it, and he didn't have a lot of support. And I remember one day he popped on the drug test for meth, zero tolerance. We were getting ready to separate him, and the sergeant major asked me to write a statement about him. And my statement was honest. I have no bad experience with Mihard. He was a good Marine up until he suddenly wasn't. I had nothing bad to say about him. And the sergeant major tried to make me retract my statement and change it. And I refused. He was like, "You're not helping us." I'm like, I'm not here to help you kick him out. Do what you need to do, but you asked me to write a statement. This is my statement. I get that. It's a zero tolerance rule, but he's still one of us. We all still loved him. And when I say we, I mean me and my junior Marines. I had a lieutenant that called him a shitbag in front of people, and he wasn't a shitbag. He made a mistake. And yeah, he should, you know, um, pay consequences for it. Like, there are consequences for your actions. But I wish there was more that we could have done to ease him out. And I wanted to help him, but I didn't know what to do. And no one offered me any ideas or advice. I couldn't help him. Um, so I just remember suddenly he was out. I lost contact with him. I was going through my own things. So, he kind of just slipped through my mind. I didn't think about him much anymore. And one day I get an ad from somebody named Anthony on Snapchat. Or I think it said Tony, which is why I didn't recognize him. I think it just said Tony. And all I said to him was, "Who is this? If I don't know you, I'm going to delete you," or something along those lines. I actually have it screenshot, but I don't like looking at it. And then he said, "It's me, Harg." And all I said to him was, "Okay, I was just making sure you weren't my ex." I didn't ask him how he was doing or anything. And a couple weeks later, he was dead. His dad called the unit. I can't remember who picked up, but his dad had called asking about military honors. And at the time, I was there because I had picked up orders, so I was basically active duty for a few months. So I was there when someone got the call. It's kind of a blur. I might have even got the call myself. I can't remember. Um, and I just remember them telling me, yeah, he doesn't get any honors. He got a dishonorable discharge. He did drugs. We can't do anything for his dad. I don't know, the whole thing just seems really fucked to me. Just from the moment he got caught and how we were just so quickly trying to kick him out without even thinking about what happened at home. Why did he go astray? What led to this? And because he wasn't a bad person, he wasn't a bad Marine. And for them to just straight up deny his dad any, I don't know, closure. I think he had some gear that he was trying to give back to us too. This is not nice, but he looked dumb. He had this dumb smile all the time. He was one of those that just looked like he couldn't he couldn't be phased. He was mostly quiet, but not shy. He would speak when spoken to, um, and he volunteered a lot. Uh, I helped run a McMap course, and he was working on getting his gray belt. And he was always stepping up, willing to lead stretches and things like that. So he wasn't shy. He, in my opinion, was everything a Marine should be. So it really pissed me off when they tried to tell me that I can't write what I wrote about him. They didn't know him, they didn't work with him. I did. We think he overdosed. It's hard to say whether or not it was intentional, but what I do know is that he lost his twin brother before joining the Marine Corps to suicide. He had a necklace on him that was an urn that carried his brother's remains. I know he hated being at home. He never wanted to go back when drill was over. He was trying to get on orders, but we had no use for putting a PFC on orders. I know he was big on like maintaining his dignity. So I would imagine he wouldn't have known how to actually ask for that kind of help anyway if we tried to offer it to him. I do know whenever there was an opportunity to put someone on orders, he was desperately trying to volunteer. But like I said, they just said we had no use for PFC. Those were really the only signs he's ever given me anyway. So I know he really did not like being back home. This recruiter that convinced him to join the reserves instead of active duty really fucked up his plans. To this day, we don't really know much about his death. We're all afraid to ask. When I was with Ninth Com, after we came home, one of our chief warrant officers died by suicide. I wasn't close to him, but it happened. It happened again at my last unit. When I left 6 Anglico, I joined 1 Meth. One of my most stellar Marines there died by suicide. I hadn't been with that unit very long, but I loved them nonetheless. It was my first opportunity to become a staff sergeant of a lot of Marines. At 6 Anglico, I was only in charge of a handful. They were an active duty unit too, so I really got to feel like I was back in the Marine Corps. I don't know, it just came as a shocker. The news hit me when I was working at the hospital, because although I was with an active duty unit, I was still a reservist. I was just attached to them. It doesn't matter how close I was to him. It hurts the same. Between me, Harg, and Vasquez, Sergeant Vasquez, there were some others in between. I had a psychiatrist through the VA, and she had said to me that it's not normal for a person to deal with so much death. And I remember her being concerned for me. And she at some point in time have asked me, if this is something I still wanted to be a part of, because death is such a big part of the military, big part of the Marines. Losing Vasquez, I didn't want to deal with that anymore. That, and it was in the middle of the pandemic. It was a lot for me. So even though I was about to hit 15 years, 5 more years to go, I don't think I could have handled any more. There was a Marine that I was pretty close with at Fuji, my very first duty station. He had gotten out, and I learned about his death years later. I think they found him maybe alcohol poisoning, I'm not sure, but at Six Anglico, there was another motorcycle accident. So he was a young Marine. One of my closest friends, Courtney, she was never in the Marines, but she died by suicide the year after Miharg, around the same time. And then when Vasquez happened, I know this isn't true, but I sometimes started thinking there was a really dark cloud following me, and I started overthinking, unreasonable things like, oh, these are all happening in October. October is the month. October is the month I should stay inside and stay away from people. And but I've gone through therapy, I've gone through treatment, so I've been coached to take myself out of those thoughts, I suppose. I had a really, really good psychiatrist. I don't think I have the healthiest coping mechanisms, but yeah, sometimes I just want to sit there and feel everything. So I'll pull up pictures, I'll pull up videos, text messages. It's weird. Sometimes I just want to grieve all over again because for some reason I want to go through the process again. And I feel like maybe if I complete the process, it'll help me push through. And maybe that does work because, eventually I can carry on again, get through the days. I'm at a point where I will go whole days without thinking about them sometimes. I think I'm fortunate to be a parent because that definitely drives me to stay out of the darkness. She's never seen me sad. I don't plan on letting her see me vulnerable, not anytime soon. She doesn't like talking about it. She is uncomfortable with tragedy um, and death. She knows of Miharg. She knows of Courtney. She knows of Vasquez. She's 13. When I was a staff sergeant, I wish I could remember the acronym of this training, but we were put through this course that focused on how to navigate Marines that are troubled and going through things. At the time of me Harg happening, I feel like Six Anglico really could have used that training. I don't think it existed back then. This was 2016 when Miharg died. It played scenarios where a Marine's getting in trouble and the sergeant or whatever would come talk to the Marine and be like, what are you doing that's causing you to fuck up so much? So it makes leadership try to look at the bigger picture rather than focus on the fuck up and start to think about why is this fuck up happening? I think Mihard really needed that and it would have helped. And I think if the leadership around me at Six Anglico was on that same mindset, he'd probably be alive today. I was a reservist when I got out, and they don't really, not for me anyway, they didn't offer me anything to transition. You kind of just disappeared. But this was with the active duty side.
Mm.
Um, and it was one of those courses that's required for leadership. It didn't really sink in at first because I was just so busy. I got out in 2020 and the pandemic was really picking up. I think it was around the next year when the birthday ball, everyone was getting ready for their birthday balls. I felt like I lost a huge part of my identity. I really wish there was a way for me to stay in. I'm at a point where I'm headed towards nursing school. Nursing was not my first choice. I can't say I'm thrilled about it. I do wish I could have stayed. Don't feel completely lost without it, but I feel like something's missing now. I'm still in contact with my Six Anglico Marines, the Motor T Marines of Six Anglico. And we have gotten together. a couple times since we last saw each other. The last time we had a drill together, we did come to Pendleton. I unknowingly took us on our last hike on First Sergeant's Hill, and we do talk about wanting to do something like that again together. I was trying to bring them to the Silkies hike. None of the ones I reached out to made it, but oddly enough, one of the Marines that I don't talk to anymore happened to be there, and we reconnected at the Silkies hike. It's so refreshing to be around other Marines, other vets in general. We're just drawn to each other. When I went to school, community college in San Francisco, the only friends I made happened to be other veterans. And it wasn't even from me seeking them, we're just drawn to each other. The only friends I made from San Francisco are Marines, and I've served with none of them. I feel like I did go in and out of depression because I was suddenly a civilian. I was suddenly divorced, suddenly a single parent with a small baby, and I had no time to be sad. I had to get my shit together and figure out how I was going to take care of this baby. And sometimes it would hit me really hard, and there were days where I would just spiral down and crawl into a corner in my room, low key panic about my situation, the situation that I got myself in, being mad at myself for getting out of active duty. So it was a roller coaster for sure, those 2 years. Finding female leadership is important, female companionship in a male dominated industry. I really could have used that as a young Marine, and I didn't have that. I didn't have completely bad leadership, but it wasn't the same not having female leadership to look up to. And I get my situation was probably unique because one of my leaders was romantically involved with, the one female that could have been a good leader to me but wasn't. You're not going to make everyone happy. As long as you try to kick ass and be good at what you do, the respect will come. There will be individuals out there that will just hate you for being a female, and that's just the way it is. I went through that too. With 6 Anglico, I was the only female for a long time. There was a sergeant, or I don't know if she was a staff sergeant when she arrived, but she was like in and out. We had a female corpsman, but I was largely the only female for a long time. And it was a hard adjustment for, the males too, because they had previously been all males before me and the 2 others came along. As long as you do your job well, kick ass, you'll get through it. It reminds me of when at 6 Angico, I outshot them. I was the high shooter at the range. And I didn't know I was a high shooter, but Sergeant Major had this little speech about how, well, there's one place where the playing field is totally even. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. Sergeant Fan, come on out, high shooter. You got any words? And I'm just like, nope. I walked away. Thanks for having me. Semper Fi.